Good evening, dear friends, and thank you for joining us once again this week to our first chamber lectures. We continue with our seminar on the science of meditation, and today we go into our lecture number 10 in the series, and this one is titled Enigmas. This is the story of Master Tieh Shan. Well, it so happens that the story goes like this. Tieh Shan learned about Buddhism when he was 13 years old, and at 18 he became a priest. As he was doing that, he read a thesis on advanced meditation and he learned about the mantra Wu. And as he started practicing intensely with the mantra Wu on the fourth night of constant practicing, sweat from all over his body started coming in, and he says that he felt light and that he felt comfortable. And as he woke up before sunrise, and Huatao made itself present. Master Tieh Shan says Huatao was with me everywhere. Evidently, at the age of 13 becomes a very significant time in his life, because we already know that Arcanum 13 is Arcanum of Death. And it is at that moment where he decided to achieve that state of defining himself, of leaving behind his old ways of being, of embracing a new way of thinking. At that moment where that old aspect of himself was truly eliminated, that is when he learned about the doctrine of the illumination of the soul. And of course, by 18, he became a priest, because the number 18 Kabbalistically adds up to 9. And number 9 is the Arcanum of the Hermit. This is an Arcanum of initiation. This is at that moment in his life in which he took those vows to work intensely in that awakening of the consciousness. In that same light, it should be of no surprise that on the fourth night, there was water emanating from all of his body. Because that number 4 has to do with the innermost. That is the emperor of the tarot. That is our true being. The master who is actually leading the work. And that water is a symbol of those creative waters. So this is why he felt light. This is why he felt comfortable. And he woke up before sunrise. He was fully awakened before the arrival of that inner Christ. And Huatao made itself present. Huatao, that manifestation of the real being, was with him everywhere. Knowing that the lives of the masters are always lived in symbols, it is important that we pay attention to these things, because the teaching is veiled behind the symbols themselves. He continues by saying, on March 20th, Master Yen told him, sit up straight and freshen your mind as if you were before a 10,000-foot precipice, and concentrate in your Huatao. Work like this for 7 days and you will reach self-realization. Working like this for 7 days is of much importance. Not only because the number 7 speaks of willpower, it reminds us of the Arcanum of Triumph, where the innermost is standing on a chariot of gold, and that chariot is pulled by 2 distinct horses, or 2 distinct sphinxes, one white and one black. That chariot of gold is the combination of the solar existential bodies of the being. All of those bodies, faculties, powers, abilities that make up the solar soul. And that master, that innermost, on his right hand, he has either a sword or a whip. The sword is always a symbol of the sexual libido, of the creative power that exists in each and every one of us. And the whip is always a symbol of willpower. But beyond that, the number 7 is also indicating that there are 7 serpents of fire that we must work with. Because we not only should rise the serpent of fire in our physical body, the same should happen in our ethereal body. And once those two have risen, we must rise the serpent in the astral body, in the mental body, in the causal body. And beyond that realm of causation, we must raise the serpent of the body of the illuminated soul. And last, the serpent of fire in the body of the innermost. And this is why Master Yang told them, work like this for 7 days, and you will reach self-realization. And he says, I started improving. On the 3rd day, I became unconscious of everything around me. And one night, I got the sensation I was split, felt stretched 10,000 feet up. I asked Master Yen about this, and his reply was, it is not this. Keep working. It is certain that we will start seeing an improvement the moment that we start applying that willpower that is required of that Arcanum 7. Because in our current condition, we are too comfortable. Comfortable with the way we're living. We have even made ourselves comfortable with our level of suffering. And in such a degree that it is so easy to justify simply not doing the work. But when we change our mind, when we change our ways of thinking, when we choose to become a new container to receive this profound wisdom of Gnosis, well, then at that moment, the willpower that is necessary for that drives substantial improvements that become noticeable almost immediately. It says here that on the 3rd day, he became unconscious. On that 3rd day of practicing, but not just any practice. Not like many of us would do, that we would choose to sit down and meditate for 15 or 20 minutes because it's late and we have to go to bed because tomorrow we have to wake up early. Certainly not like that. This 3 is the Arcanum 3 of the Tarot that speaks of aesthetics and beauty. It speaks of the beauty of creation. It refers to the beauty that we have to apply to the work itself. And of course, it says that one day he got the sensation that he was split. Split here is important because as we are doing this work, it is very common for many students to try to look at their thoughts, at the emanations and those manifestations that come directly from the mind, and they tend to create separateness. It is me and my ego. It is me observing and that thing that I observe. And on top of that, because our mind is constantly comparing, it would only apply labels and names to those things that it observes. And it complements the thought by saying, and that thing that I am observing that is bad and that is hurting me. And we create divisiveness internally, failing to realize that all of these things are exactly multiple aspects of just one thing. So having the sensation that we are split, acknowledging, reaching that cognition that shows that we have been making the mistake of separating ourselves from our own defects is indeed a mistake. And this is why he says that he felt stretched up 10,000 feet. Because the Kabbalistic addition of 10,000 is 1. And 1 is the arcanum of the higher priest. That is the arcanum of the Father. Number 1 has to do with originations, with new ideas, with things that start. This is why when he asked Master Yen, it is not this, keep working. Even behind this comment from Master Yen, we find a very profound teaching. Because many students will go into the exercise of meditation and they will approach it thinking, feeling, hearing, sensing all kinds of different things. vibrations in the body, lights that manifest, voices that speak to them, the seeing of great illuminated beings that come and walk around them. All of these are artifices of the mind. We have never seen a student that comes around and says that in his meditation that those beings that come around, that they are beggars. None of them say that any beings that come around them at the time of meditation, that they are representations of poor, humble people. It is always an indication that some great being of light, dressed in beautiful garments with sparkles and gold and swords, will come and speak to them. This is all the result of our own fanaticisms, in our own condition, in the state of degeneration that we find ourselves today. To continue expecting to have great masters descending and speaking to us and depositing in us certain things is certainly a fallacy. Because all of these things are things that have to be earned. And the only way that we can earn them and make that change is through the elimination of our psychological aggregates. We have to give way of all of that that is old so that we can make that time space for everything that is new. We cannot receive the faculties, the attributes, the powers, the gifts of the innermost for as long as we continue with our own lusts, for as long as we continue with our anger, with our desire for revenge. We cannot receive all of these powers and think that we are illuminated beings for as long as we continue to criticize others, and even worse, when we know that we are reacting internally with violence, and on the outside, what we're giving others is just a smile and what appears to be a gentle look. Because those are nothing more than the behavior of the hypocrite Pharisee that exists in each and every one of us. Tieh Shan stated that Master Yang cited some words of Dharma, and he said, to spread and glorify their noble deeds, Buddhas and patriarchs must receive a blow to the neck. Why? He asked. And then he remembered that koan that says, if you return your bones to your father and your flesh to your mother, where are you? And he says, I remembered being asked this before, but now there was no doubt. Every time that there is a dialogue between the master and the student in Zen Buddhism, what we see is the expression of a koan. Buddhas and patriarchs must receive a blow to the neck. These are phrases that are enigmatic in nature. The mind struggles to comprehend its meaning, and when we are constantly repeating these koans within the realm of our mind, what will inevitably happen is that the mind will surrender itself, and it will fall onto its knees, incapable of deciphering such deep and profound wisdom. This is exactly why Master Tieh Shan, as he hears this koan, he is immediately taken back to another koan that he had already experienced. If you return your bones to your father and your flesh to your mother, where are you? He had no doubt that he was facing that enigma, that he was facing a tool that would help him to bring about the necessary quietness and stillness of the mind to be able to disconnect from the ego and allow the consciousness to free itself and float freely within the realm of the innermost. So Tieh Shan went to see Master Meng Shan. When and where? can we consider our Zen work completed? Was the question that he received. And he could not answer. Master Meng Shan then said, keep working in dhyana. So Tieh continued meditating, and he kept doing it until he reached profound subtleness. And then he went again to Master Meng. What was your original face? Asked the master. And being him unable to answer, Master Meng Shan kicked him out of the room and closed the door. Every time that a master has an encounter with one of his students, the transaction itself becomes a koan. When and where can we consider our Zen work completed? What is your original face? Certainly the ego cannot answer. And this is why Master Tieh says, I could not answer. Being unable to answer, trying to make an effort to extract this deep wisdom from within the mind that is nothing more than our own ego, because in our ego we find our mind, our desires, our willpower, our intentions, our commitments, everything. He was kicked out of the room, and Master Meng Shan closed the door. Of course, this reminds us immediately of that parable that is captured in the Gospels of the Apostles. That great master that announces that weddings are about to be celebrated, and as he notices that there is one participant who is not dressed adequately, he asked his servants to tie him up and throw him outside where it was cold, and all that could be heard was the lamentation and the gnashing of teeth. This is a very deep teaching, because the fact that he was kicked out of the room is equivalent to that man who was participating of that superior celebration without the adequate garments. What this is telling us is that there is no opportunity for us to be able to penetrate within those higher realms of consciousness until we have satisfied all of the necessary requirements. Of course, there are many practitioners of meditation who become experts at abandoning the physical body. Their consciousness can leave behind the ego and can disconnect itself from the physical body, and they can penetrate up into the highest realms of consciousness. But that does not mean that they can still there and live there. They may experience that, and for certain, that consciousness comes back re-energized with a renewed longing. But nevertheless, it has to come back into the ego. It has to return into this realm of substance, bound to the wheel of samsara, until, through the work of the transmutation of the waters and through the invocation of the Divine Mother, those aggregates can be adequately reduced to cosmic dust. So Master Meng Shan, in his infinite kindness, looked at him and said, "This is as polishing a pearl. The more you polish, the purest it becomes." And then when Tieh attempted to answer the question, the master would always say, "Something is missing." Then one day, missing came to my mind, and I felt my mind and my body split up. Certainly that thing that was missing was the experience of the illuminating void. When Master Meng is saying, "This is as polishing a pearl. The more you polish, the purest it becomes," anyone who has ever done any polishing knows very well that as you polish, you are using an abrasive material against the surface, and that you are slowly wearing it out. And the more you polish, the more you wear out, until there comes a time that there is nothing left. So this is indeed as polishing a pearl. The more you polish, the more you scrape the more you eliminate, the purest it becomes. Because that is exactly what happens with our own psychological aggregates. The more of them we can eliminate, the purest is the manifestation of the consciousness. And after the experience of the missing, after experiencing that thing that was not there at first, the ecstasy was so intense that he started laughing and he jumped off his feet to see Master Meng. "What am I missing?" said Tieh Shan to Master Shan. And at that moment, the master slapped him 3 times. And after being slapped, Tieh Shan prostrated. And then Master Meng Shan stated, "Dear Tieh Shan, it has taken you long to achieve this." The master had to slap him, simply because sometimes we tend to have a little experience here and a little experience there. There are times in which we successfully unfold in our astral body, and we return into the physicality having clear consciousness of everything that we did, everywhere we walked, everything that we heard. And the level of excitement is such that if we do not keep ourselves in check, we will tend to believe, "Oh, I already have this dominated. I've got this." And there are aspects of pride that in very gentle and subtle ways will work themselves up and manifest and taint the experience. The same thing will happen with the experience of the faculty of clairvoyance. The same thing will happen with the experience that we gain when we work with the elementals of nature. The same thing will happen when we have the opportunity to work with the elements of nature itself. If we do not maintain that remembrance of self, we start thinking that all of these experiences are the result of our effort and not a gift from the innermost. And there is a big difference. Because the gift from the innermost comes as a result of eliminating our own inhumanity. On the other hand, thinking that things are a result of our effort brings all of the attention into the I, the myself. And this is why he was slapped 3 times. 3 in particular. Because it was a way to create in him the awareness that otherwise could have led him to lose the progress that he made. And dear friends, this is why we always tell you, all of the experiences that we achieve, whether it is through meditation, through the exercise of retrospection, and the practice of blue time, as we are practicing runes, chanting mantras, etc. These are experiences, they are all very individual and they are very particular. These experiences are meant to be hermetic. They're not meant to be shared with anybody. Because number one, anyone who hears them will not comprehend them to the degree that you did. Because the experience was meant for you, not for them. And number 2, because when we share those experiences, we always awaken psychological aggregates of envy or greed or ambition or resentment or hatred and even laziness in anyone who may be listening to us. This is why this work is certainly not for everyone. And this is why this work requires of us developing the right level of cultural intellect so that we can set forth the discipline that is necessary not only to assimilate the doctrine, but to be able to experience the experiential wisdom itself. Dear friends, we sourced this material from Samael's Christmas message of the year 1970 to the year 1971. This has been Enigmas, the story of Master Tieh Shan. Dear friends, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and may all beings be happy.